I'm joined now by Kanita Hunter. She's, of course, with News 24. She's also co-author of the book 8 Days in July, which probed in great detail what led up to the arrest that left over 300 people dead. Of course, also losing the economy billions of rands in damaged infrastructure and looting. Kanita, so we see that the Human Rights Commission have had their final sitting, but you know, it's almost a year. It's almost a year since the unrest started and took place. The unanswered questions around why more than 300 people died. Do we know how many were murders? How many were trampled? How many drowned or burned to death? Or, you know, do we know those details yet?
Yeah, that's the difficulty of the South African Human Rights Commission, that it was sort of treated as this effort, you know, to sort of a cathartic effort to sort of unpack what actually happened without it being given real teeth to understand and to quantify the extent of the damage. And you hear what MEC Ravi Pillay was saying today, it almost seems as if there is more questions than answers 1 year on. The reality of it is that we're seeing very, very little people being prosecuted for murders that happened during that time. We're seeing even less people successfully prosecuted for a lot of the economic sabotage that happened at the time. And we know that there's a recommendation by the previous report by Professor Sandy Africa that somebody should be facing terrorism charges. Now, if you look at the South African Human Rights Commission efforts, they obviously tried to get people to come and give answers, ministers, the president. But again, there's this constant blame game. And for me, the most crucial question is who in law enforcement should be held accountable, in the sense that they should actually lose their job and be criminally charged for what has happened.
Yeah, so I mean, there's big questions at the top, but there's also issues around the so-called masterminds. This former Ukhozi FM DJ Ngizwe Mchunu, that's one name that's out there, but there must be many others, and we don't seem to get regular updates on what exactly is going on to bring those people who planned it.
You will understand that the concept of these masterminds of 18 people, you know, purported to be planning this unrest came from the Minister of Police himself. And now that the public has sort of moved on, there isn't that kind of effort to say how we're going to hold these people accountable, particularly because when those names were actually revealed to the public, it was sort of low-lying people, and there is the sentiment that government and the law enforcement is not going to those who are at the center of the unrest and of the planning of these coordinated efforts. You would remember, Sally, that when President Cyril Ramaphosa appeared before this very commission, South African Human Rights Commission hearings into the July unrest, he called it a well-coordinated, orchestrated attack against the government. He said those words. So the question is, who orchestrated it? And I think that if the report is successful, is that it needs to point to the direction as to who should be held accountable. If not who did it, then who allowed it to happen.
And, you know, at the same time, we also see that Jacob Zuma's daughter, Dudu Zuma, just recently posting tweets that are problematic, I would argue. Quote, "I smell another unrest." And another one, "It's time to take our country back," with a photo of a burning building. Now, she made a number of very inflammatory social media posts during and just before the July violence. Why has she, well, certainly not to my knowledge, not been questioned or reined in?
I mean, that was the question that was asked repeatedly during the unrest, when ministers would come and update us about the death tolls increasing every single day. And she would, a social media account seemingly belonging to the former president's daughter was posting these really inflammatory statements, and there was sort of this helplessness. And you can understand where politics comes into a situation like this, because an ordinary person may not get away with this kind of inflammatory, incitement to violence, at least. And the reality of it is that there was this warning that the police had said, or intelligence had said last year, that despite it being quelled, the 8 days in July being quelled and life sort of resuming to normal after last year, that there will be flare-ups because, again, there has not been any real consequences. And you see, just over the weekend, Sally, you see now there's a repeated effort to get people to emulate what happened in July for different nefarious reasons.
Exactly. I mean, we're seeing the truckers' blockade. We're seeing Operation Dudula. We're seeing people increasingly desperate. Unemployment sky high. Cost of living creeping higher and higher. Could it happen again? Or do you think that such a coordinated attack, planned insurrection, if you will, is not likely to happen in the same way again?
I think that there's all the warning signs that it can happen again. And I think there is that admission from the top echelons of government that, yes, it can happen. The situation is ripe in terms of the unrest, in terms of the social fabric of society, that there's enough wrong for, the situation is flammable enough. Let me say it that way, Sally. But the reality of it is the responsibility of the state to stop it from happening. It's the state's duty to protect the citizens from themselves. And so what has happened? Yes, you've had a new police commissioner now, which the president will appoint to in the form of Fanny Masimola. You also have a new head of the state security agency in the form of Tami Majola. And so the reality of it is that, you've seen some movement on the top, but how does that trickle down in terms of real consequences? The reality of it is no one has been successfully prosecuted for what has happened in July, not even for a single murder in the year that has passed. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of undealt with trauma, Sally. And I think that that's what the citizens of Durban and surrounding areas, are hoping to get some answers from forums like the South African Human Rights Commission investigation into the inquiry into the unrest, so that they can then move on in time to understand and try to make peace with the gravity of what happened, because it will take a very long time for people who were affected by that unrest to clearly and truly get closure.
Yes, indeed. That's a very good point that you make. Thank you so much, Kanita Hunter, Assistant Political Editor at News 24. She's also co-author of the book 8 Days in July, which probes the July unrest of last year.